Chris Niccolls, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me back. This is great.
I love having you here. We're in person, we're in the studio, and we're trying out a new multicam way of doing this. So This is another good episode to watch and not just listen to. Also, listening to will be terrible because my room is the most echoey place in the universe.
It is a little bit echoey, but even more so than my basement, my dark, dingy basement.
Speak closely to our microphones. I'll since we have a new setup going on, I needed to get more technical. I needed the best of the best in the industry.
Right.
So I stole your video expert. So we also have Jordan Drake.
Yeah, guys, I'm back here as well, and it is quite echoey. I can tell you. It's
at the wheels of steel. So Jordan's kind of playing our producer role, making sure everything's like working here. Yeah. I just wanted this to feel like, those professional podcasts where there's like somebody behind the soundboard that, we can.
No, you found the best of the best at being the most promiscuous. He'll work for anybody. Like, he's got no scruples.
Exactly what
he
I
cheats
needed.
on me all the time.
Thank you for the privilege of letting me have a little bit of a different experience.
But this is cool because we are trying out the brand new Final Cut Multicam Live, right? So we've got 4 angles. Jordan can monitor them all. That's pretty neat.
It's pretty crazy. So we'll need to describe a lot for anybody listening. But also to finish the intro, Petapixel. This is the YouTube channel that you guys run, and I love the work that you do. We are all in Calgary. We've all been doing this almost.
You've been a guest on our show since TCS TV, DP Review,
and I was just on your guys' podcast recently.
Yes.
So it's great to.
We've had a great relationship,
and we just got to hang out in person, so we can follow up on that a bit.
Exactly.
We've got a whole bunch of topics. Let's start with exactly what Chris was saying to talk about the new Final Cut for iPad updates that we're using right now. So, Chris, describe what we're seeing in the room here.
So basically, we've got the iPad going. It's got 4 phones, which is a smattering of all our phones, all hooked up, connected together. And I've got one pointed at me. You've got one pointed at you. We've got a wide frame and one pointed up Jordan's nose. And
it's very flattering.
Yeah, and so this is interesting because on the whole screen on the iPad, Jordan can monitor everything. He can change white balance. He can change audio levels. And then we'll have a multicam timeline in Final Cut to then put together. So hopefully it simplifies this. I mean, this is kind of the idea, right? It's aimed at people doing podcasts or maybe like YouTube musicians and stuff. I could see doing that, or interview work, right? Where you just want to have multiple angles and not have to go through the trouble of having to have a mixing board and switching and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And the version that we were setting up here is the beta. So like we're just kind of figuring it out. There isn't any documentation, so we had to kind of find our way through it. And, for the most part, when it worked, it was ridiculously simple.
Yes.
A couple phones just kind of weren't connecting.
Yeah.
Don't really know why.
We kind of did the old PC trick, just, hard
try it again.
Yeah. Make sure power cables are plugged in,
And eventually that worked. So now we got it going. So I mean, overall, assuming that bug doesn't turn out to be a common thing, I found this very, very simple to set up. Nice things about it are that iPhone batteries last a long time. It stores the videos locally to the phone as you're recording, and then is wirelessly transmitting them, I think, as you go, so that at the end, everything is in Final Cut on the iPad, which is great for me because I edit in Final Cut. Do you guys edit your podcast in? What do you edit in?
Not our podcast. Our main show is still cut in Final Cut. So.
Oh, okay, but your podcast is in Premiere. Is that what you guys are doing?
Yeah, our editor-in-chief edits the podcast in Premiere. But, I do some editing on the iPad as well. I'm trying to make it a workflow computer for bower trout fitters, which is the fly fishing stuff I do. So I don't see us doing a lot of multicam, obviously, for the nature. I mean, I don't know if I want 4 phones up on a boat drifting down the river. But I do like this. I am using the Final Cut software for iPad.
Right, okay, yeah. And the thing is, even if you were... This is a big change for Final Cut for iPad because it came out a while ago. I kind of reviewed it, tested it when it happened, and I didn't edit with it that much because I'm just not I love the Mac. The Mac is my home. It's where I really get things done. So, the iPad became a bit of a novelty in a way, right? So I'm like, let's play with it. This is actually bringing the iPad into a more useful space than the Mac and makes your iPhone cameras more versatile than some like real cameras. Because I can set up this rig. Jordan's been in the room when we've set it up other ways, and there's wires running everywhere. It's like, it's messy and complicated.
It's intimidating, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now we have the only wires are batteries to keep the phones extra charged, but they may not even be necessary. And then I've also got wireless mics running into one of the cameras, so that we kind of actually have backup audio right now. So you could just do that if you have I'm using the Rode wireless Pros. Is that what they're called?
Yeah, we've got those
That's
as
what's running
backups.
right now. And you could do the whole show like that, and it would sound great.
And I mean, people are going to say, oh, do I need 4 iPhones? No, obviously not. I mean, even if you just have an iPad, which is necessary, obviously you need your iPad as the base station, but that can be one of the camera angles. Use another phone that everybody's going to have as then like a second angle. That already ups your production value quite a bit.
Yep.
And I guess it's worth saying that the phones all have the latest now new version of Final Cut Camera. That's the part of it. And that's a nice interface for people who want something a little bit more advanced than the basic.
Final Cut Camera is something I've been waiting for. I mean, sort of strange branding. I did not see them extending the Final Cut brand out, but there's a bunch of features that have been missing from the regular camera app, and that app is very complicated.
Yes.
It's photos and it's videos and it's portrait mode and cinematic mode and panoramic, and it does so much in there. So making this a dedicated, here's the pro video features. I really appreciate it. So even if you have no use for the multicam, the other thing that this does, I'm going to use this for, I really appreciate it, is just monitoring. So now if you want to run a YouTube channel and you want to kind of keep it really simple, mounting an iPhone pointed at you and then putting an iPad in front of you so you can see yourself suddenly becomes a great way to like do the whole thing, beginning to end. You just one iPhone, one iPad, and you can see yourself. You can capture high quality everything.
That's it, Jordan.
I'm going to jump over as a producer here because we've used a lot of other switching things wirelessly, and the latency is horrendous.
Right.
And this, it's just completely seamless looking at it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any way people watching, if you can tell the latency, but it's excellent. Like it kind of feels, there's HDMI that's been more laggy than this.
Absolutely. No, it's so far it seems like a really nice setup.
Yeah. So I'm I'm impressed.
And it's going to take up a little bit of storage on the iPad, but of course the other big change with Final Cut for the iPad Pro that I'm excited about is being able to work off external drives now and not tie up the built. I mean, I have up to this point been taking all my footage, moving it over to the iPad, right? And then I've got to edit it, make my timeline, export it. Then I got to move that all back. It's really annoying. So this is going to be nice.
Yeah, and even if I don't end up editing on the iPad, I mean, I'll try it on the iPad for this episode.
It's better. It's getting better.
But I could just quickly bump it over to my Mac.
Yeah.
The file's going to work,
Yeah.
gives you a great head start. So
unfortunately, just not the other way back. But
yeah. But each of us are making more complete videos talking about some of these features. So if you want to know more, check out the Petapixel YouTube channel or also my channel. There will be more info.
Check out both.
Yes. Yeah. Watch them at the same time in a multicam setup.
And
then cut them together and send us that final edit.
Please,
great.
I've got a couple other topics I wanted to hit. One is, we're coming up shortly after the Apple announcements, which I got to see, and I had a recent episode about, but I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it. I don't have anything specific. I'm just like, I can't stop thinking about Siri being more intelligent, and the general AI stuff coming to iPhones and iPads and Macs, and this just feels like kind of a big moment. Did you guys have any big takeaways after WWDC?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the things that are on our mind, we've of course been talking about AI a lot. It is funny that it's Apple Intelligence, which AI, great for them. Good job, Apple. First off, I guess we could talk about Apple Photo, just some of the basic AI things there. We're still trying to figure out all this stuff, and you could probably give us some insight into this. But as far as I understand it, the actual Photos AI, where you're editing images, seems to be just like generative fill to this point. Is there anything else to that?
It is of their version of generative fill, yes. And I did get to see it in action. It's clearly pulling from the previous feature of when you tap to kind of peel the subject away.
Right.
They've had subject detection for a little while now. It's doing that, plus now fill in the background behind it. And, it's nice seeing this done well. I haven't tried the Google one. I don't know if you guys have seen how well does the Pixel do it? Would you use it?
So I guess this is the thing. So the if I understand it correctly, the Apple system is not going to the cloud to do any sort of AI work. It's all device-based. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Google and Samsung are both doing something very similar. And to be fair, the Google AI that I've used for erasing subjects and doing the fill in the background actually works really well. And that isn't cloud-based. That is on the phone. But then they have the cloud-based software where you can do more advanced stuff like cut people out, move them around the frame, separate things apart, that kind of stuff. Really more like heavy cut-paste kind of stuff. That has to go to the cloud. It's a pretty slow process, and the results are actually fairly poor, to be honest. It's not seamless. You really can see where the problems are. So AI, Apple's not really going to that degree yet, and maybe that's a good thing because frankly, it's not quite ready yet, I don't think.
Well, and I keep hoping that Apple will be conservative with these modifications. I know everybody's like itching for this feature, and it's very useful and helpful. But I also am still always a little hesitant about like the more people that are massively modifying their photo, like every single photo, the more sort of confusion there is about what is a photo and what's,
Well, I
so
feel like-
I'm okay taking it slow.
I feel like that's a good move too, because I think obviously a lot of people are getting worried about what AI is going to mean as far as their workflow, their privacy. I mean, of course, Adobe, we talked about in our podcast, the whole Adobe thing where there's this big scare, or are they going to take all of our stuff? Are they going to have access to NDA materials that we don't want them to have? Someone who's not even a professional creative has every right to have privacy to their family photos. Like, I don't want my kids' images up where I don't want them, or I don't know where they are and stuff, or, family, private moments, that kind of stuff. And so I think AI in general, rightfully so, has a lot of people hesitant about.
Sure, yeah.
It's so hard not only to know what the AI is capable of, but also what have I agreed to? What have I not agreed to? Where do I say I want to opt out of this? Where do I automatically opt into this, right? So I think a lot of people are scared about that. And so, we could talk about Siri. Siri's had updates now, and Siri, again, as I understand, is device-based, specifically just accessing it, because you can do things like, hey Siri, I don't know, check my flight, and then email my mom and let her know the details for me, right?
Yeah.
Which means it has to go through multiple layers of information, emails, texts, contacts, right? So what's the safety there? What's your opinion on that?
I mean, they absolutely did what nobody else really can do, because they are so on-device reliant, and they have the data already locked into your phone. So the nice thing is, a lot of the responses I saw on the TikToks and stuff that I posted about this, people were like, "Oh, great! Now Apple has all my data." And my response was like, "Well, but it's in your phone now, right? Like the data is already there. The phone is still now just internally moving that data around in different ways." And there's every time I talk about AI, I need to bring up that it's like AI isn't a single thing. It's not a little mind inside your computer that is thinking things through. It's like approach to being able to deal with data in a certain way. And so everything that has an AI label doesn't necessarily mean there's any kind of thought behind what's happening here. So I think the amount of just how conservative Apple was with all this was really helpful. And then the fact that, it doesn't reach out to the cloud unless it needs it, and it doesn't send anything to an open platform like ChatGPT unless you give it explicit permission.
To do so. Okay.
Yeah. So I think they handled all that super well.
It's interesting to see how all the different companies are approaching AI, right? And like you say, Apple being very conservative, probably a smart move. Other people, maybe they are being honest. I'm not saying there's people out there trying to be dishonest, but like maybe they're being very upfront, but the information doesn't get across to the user properly, right? And what you don't want is people panicking or worrying or being skeptical.
But again, I do think it's good to have this assumption of assume the worst.
Yes.
I mean, really, it's on the internet, just like anything you put online, assume it's public.
Yeah.
In a way. I mean, because you never know. There's always that chance it can be whoever is protecting it. Just start with an assumption that this is going to get out there, and then, slowly build some level of trust from there.
I think it's just important for companies to make sure, I think especially going forward, I'm sure Adobe is going to do a better job going forward in the future of just being as clear and concise with as much clarity as possible. I think would be a smart move for any company.
Yeah. And my take on the whole Adobe thing is I do think it was mostly a communication issue.
Yeah.
I don't think they were ever taking your private photos to train anything. I never think that is what was happening, because it just doesn't make sense. Like that, I try to go through that narrative. I'm like, that's not what is likely to have happened.
I agree with you. Yeah.
But they need to be clear about what is happening, right? So if they've freaked everyone out this much, then that is
Twice
the
now.
problem.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So
what else happened at the event that was interesting?
I mean, the most interesting thing was seeing some things happen in person, which I think a few examples I didn't get to say on my last episode. So one was they showed Siri interacting with long form PDFs and documents.
Right.
So in real time, they were showing, I think it was like a lease agreement, and they're like, okay, I want to know if I can have pets in the building. And you're like, Siri, can I, does this say that I can have pets?
Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What's the monthly rent? What is, dig out data from something extremely long and legalese that's hard to interpret, and just like summarize it and deliver it to me. And that's what will become the most important everything there is the like summarizing, giving you context quickly. Other details like that I didn't see in the keynote is similar to the flight example where they're like, give me flight information about incoming mom's flight. They were like, hey, tell me recent sports scores, when's the next game? And what that made me realize is that it does reach out to the cloud for some, or not to the cloud, it reaches out to public information. It's not only dealing with your phone information.
Right.
When they can verify something like sports scores or like airline schedules, they will give you that. And it's only once it's like, okay, we can't verify this, that's when they hand it off to ChatGPT. So, I mean, this puts Apple at such an advantage because they're like, yeah, ChatGPT might like, which, Microsoft is deep into. It's like, well, they might lie to you, but it's not us. We're just handing it off. And right. They can just make stuff up and I don't have to worry. So, they really like leaned into their advantage of already controlling your data and having relatively high trust. So, the way they played it is brilliant. Then also all the handwriting stuff was amazing. That's available in the developer betas, so I'll actually just try
and
that.
Samsung's been playing with that too. I mean, they're all trying to kind of develop that kind of thing.
But what about Vision Pros? So that's coming to Canada. I got my first demo of it.
Nice. We still haven't
It's
put one
been
on our
out for a
heads.
while. Yeah, like are you guys interested in it in general?
I think, let Jordan talk, because, I mean, he's going to have a different opinion than me.
I mean, the big appeal for me is if I'm traveling or something like that, then just to have a second, like an 8K display or something like that. It's always like, oh, I'm traveling, so I just have to look at my dinky little 14-inch screen.
8K display.
Yeah, just to
on the
have
plane.
something that takes up very little space in the bag. Like that's the main appeal. And then, of course, watching movies on the plane. Sounds great. But to me, I'm just like, it's a lot of money, but for a very good, incredibly portable display, that might absolutely justify it. It's just that's not really who they're targeting with, that's something that they've barely even brought up, is just using it as a secondary display. But that's the biggest appeal for me until I actually see some content. So now that it's coming to Canada, we're going to go to the Apple store together and, and take a look at it.
So I'm a little bit more like scared old man about it, just insofar as like, I see the appeal of absolutely, if it's a really good display, you can edit your photos, you can get work done. You can also have that sort of, cone of silence, that privacy while you're on a plane or something like that. At the same time though, like I personally hate having stuff on me,
It's not just you. Yeah.
I don't like watches. I don't like necklaces. I don't like, I'd rather have a monitor, be able to stretch and breathe. I don't know. To me, it's a little bit weird. Obviously the AR stuff doesn't really appeal. So I'm at the stage where it's like, I'm going to be skeptical old man until I actually get to put one on my head and be blown away. Because that seems to be the opinion. People put them on and they're like, oh, it blew me away. Like, it was pretty amazing. So until I have that moment, I'm trying to be very, just reserve judgment about it. Like, I don't see myself using it for a lot of work. Maybe that will change when I play with it, and I'd love to get your opinion on that. Certainly, I could see the appeal of watching movies, playing games, stuff like that, I guess. We've seen that companies are now making cameras and making lenses specifically to try to enhance this market.
We got to talk about that too.
That's cool.
Those are pretty light announcements, but we got to hit them.
Yeah, but I don't know, how would you use it?
So this is
and can I are you going to be the dude walking down the street with your AR goggles on?
Of course.
Okay.
No. I mean, I fully see both of your perspectives on this. I'm a bit old man about it too, of that closing yourself off from the world around you, which Apple, more than some of the other companies, is trying to prevent some of that. Like that pass through, which you've probably heard this already, is very convincing, and it feels less closed in than any other system I've used. Like you still are able to just kind of act normally.
Right.
But I think that barrier to entry of people putting a thing on their head is really big. And I'm not sure if Apple even is trying to get over it at this phase, because I think this is
early days.
Yeah. And this isn't a developer only product, but that's an okay way to think about it a little bit. I don't think really casual users, it's like, look, of course this is expensive, and there will be a cheaper one and it'll work better and be lighter.
Yes.
You don't need to get into this right now.
This is a proof of concept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't know, from my experience so far, I only had the Quest 2. I haven't used the Quest 3, but I really enjoyed it at first, and then I didn't use it that much. And I've heard people say similar things about the Vision Pro at this point as well. So what I'm more excited about though is actually creating for it. I find that really interesting. Exciting though. New cameras were also part of that keynote. We now have one from DaVinci. Well, I guess it's one new camera from DaVinci.
Yes.
From Blackmagic. And then a lens from Canon.
Yeah, a couple lenses from Canon.
I've been trying to dig into this. Like, it's still hard to find a lot of info about immersive video and spatial video production. Spatial is a little bit easier, which is basically a stereo image. It's simpler to create.
And very close together.
Yes.
That's the thing. So it's like your iPhone, so the effect should be a lot less dramatic.
Right. And that's what you can shoot on your iPhone as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so Canon now has a lens that'll duplicate that, but with probably a little bit better image quality and stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, the immersive stuff is what I'm definitely much more interested in.
Are you interested, Jordan, in creating for the Vision Pro as well? Beyond the novelty of trying it out?
I mean, it's the old man thing. I don't know.
Just three old men in a room right now.
Yeah, no,
It's called a podcast.
Right.
I want to know how people are going to be using it narratively. Like, I have to see an example of someone using it in a compelling way to be like, oh, that's something I want to jump on. You've seen immersive video. I feel like I'll get a lot more excited about doing that once we're there. Because I am generally more prone to like, hey, I want to, use the latest tech in our videos.
I wonder, right? Because there were a few attempts when 360 cams came out, right? And they've gotten better than they've ever been. There were a few attempts when 360 cams came out to actually make narrative, interesting storytelling, and they kind of, just a fad. And I talked about this podcasters are like, we've seen so many fads. They always seem to be tied around 3D. Whether it's 3D movies, 3D TVs, all this kind of stuff. And so it's like, well, are we going to see this just kind of come and go really quickly? I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously our commenters are like, oh, the adult industry will keep it alive. Fair enough. But,
I don't know if that'll keep it alive.
I don't know if that will either. Yeah,
like,
you're right. But will like creators really jump on board? Like, I don't know.
Well, so examples that I think are the most, like an actual example I think would be really interesting is podcasts. I can just completely imagine an app, a way of doing this where it's like where you're just in this room. So
right,
I'm
with people?
Yeah, while I'm sitting at I've got my big screen in front of me and I'm working, and then I've got a little ghost of Chris and Jordan on the sides that are just completely present, and they're chatting back and forth, and that's like what is my entertainment as
you're editing photos and stuff.
There's
absolutely perfect sense.
or like lectures or which like that's sort of a boring thing to do in 3D, but
it makes sense.
But it's like in sports actually. So I don't care. I'm not a sports guy. The sports in the Vision Pro are like, wow, like that is legit. Yeah.
What about something you guys do a lot? Because you and Anya, you travel a lot. Like, could you see
I have
using
an
it
idea
as
for this? Yes,
yeah, right. Like where you
100%,
could like basically take people on it. Like, you're already showing us a tour, but you're showing us a curated, edited tour of the scenes you're shooting.
I'm still trying to figure out what the storytelling is for that.
Yeah,
because it's like you could just put a camera in front of the Eiffel Tower, but how long is anybody going to watch that, right? Like you got to, how do you tell a story and keep people engaged with it? And that's, I'm going to have to spend more time with the medium in general to get a sense of that, see what other people have done and get inspired.
The nice thing is this new Blackmagic camera is starting to get us to the resolution required to really take advantage of the displays in the Apple Vision Pro. And I think that's key, right? I mean, the footage has to be immersive. It has to look good. And when it's right there in your face in high detail, any seamlessness is really going to stand out. So that's, I mean, obviously the industry feels like there is a market here. They're going to push for it. So, I mean, good on them.
Yeah. And a missing thing is you need that huge resolution and high frame rates.
Yes.
So that's why the Blackmagic is important. Up till now, Reds could do, like the Red Raptor, V Raptor could do 120 frames per second in however many 8K, I guess, but enough to make this amazing. But now it's like, Blackmagic has this 17K camera. So lots to come on this.
Yeah, I honestly think we're still years out.
Yeah.
To be honest, till it really starts to hit home.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I definitely want to put one on my head and
this is the time to play. Just
see what it's like, see what the hype is about.
What's actually happening right now? Let's follow up a little bit on the last time we saw each other in person. We went to Japan. We saw the Lumix S9.
And it was a completely controversy-free launch. It was smooth sailing for everybody.
I don't know why you'd even
moving along.
Yeah.
Man, of all camera launches to bring up, it's such a big shutout. Anyways, yes. Well, we don't talk about that again.
Yeah. So I don't know. I recorded a follow-up, longer, more in-depth review that I haven't cut together, and I'm like, now it's just sitting on the shelf. I'm like, I don't know. I need to redo it. I haven't been able to get out more thoughts since we were there, so I just wanted to cover a bit more of those like long-term impressions here. And I'll just start with my opening bit that I feel like, Lumix was teed up to have the biggest hit they've ever had in this moment. The Fuji X100 GH6 is sold out forever. The Leica Q3 is massively expensive and
Ricoh
sold out.
GR3s are impossible
The Ricoh's
to get.
impossible to get a hold of.
Yeah.
Like everybody wants a camera just like this. And I'm not going to say that they blew it. I actually don't think that. I think there's a lot of people that could totally buy this camera and be happy. But obviously from a public response, they didn't hit where they wanted to.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Our job when we're reviewing these cameras is to take ourselves out of what we would want personally to some degree, right? Obviously, we're always going to have biases for this is how I like to shoot. This is the tool that I want. This is the tools that I need. But, we're not representing just what would Chris Niccolls buy in a camera. We're trying to represent who is the target audience. And so, when we talked to Panasonic, they were very honest with us. They're like, look, I don't think this is going to be your guys' jam. This isn't really going to get you super excited personally.
The exact same thing they said to me. Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, said this to Jordan, I'm like, I'm consciously going to try to approach this from a different perspective of where would this be useful, who would enjoy this. And I actually ended up having a lot of fun with the camera on the streets of Osaka. And part of that's because you're in Japan, it's all new sites, it's all new whatever, but a tool still has to perform, and it did perform for that kind of stuff. As a stylish, discreet, casual, like from the hip kind of shooting experience, I thought it was fine. I enjoyed it. The long form then response to that is, okay, but now going back to me and the work that I would do, would I use this camera? Probably not. And I think a lot of us, when we were hearing about, there's going to be an event, we didn't know it was the S9 yet at this point, we're like, wow, I sure hope it's like a compact, like GF style body or GX style body, or if they're going to go full frame, make it like a really awesome, like L mount rangefinder style, but like compact camera. Even like Jordan's like, maybe it'll have a fixed lens. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, right.
And then he's like, it'll be a 35 mil. And I'm like, no, I won't use it. Hell with that.
36.
36, right? But, and so when the S9 came out, I think, you couldn't help but be like, okay, that's
okay.
not really what we were all wishing for. So what is this camera, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And my take, I think I kind of touched this in my video, but that I wish it had been a little more expensive. A lot of people were like, it's overpriced. I'm like, if this was $200 more and it had a hot shoe and a EVF,
right?
Just that, even mechanical shutter would be nice, but just those, it like
headphone jack, even through the USB.
Also a headphone jack. Headphone jack feels cheap to add to. Like,
man, we've been complaining about that forever.
And I was saying, like, you can lose the HDMI on that camera.
Yes.
People aren't going to be using external monitors with it. They're not going to be recording externally. Throw that away. Put a headphone jack in it. But I came to it from kind of a different perspective from Chris, because he's out. Yes, I'm trying to experience this camera the way other people will. He's taking tourism photos in Japan, right? Where I'm doing my job like I normally am. I'm filming him, and the entire time I'm putting it up to my eye because I can't see the screen, and it's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
I'm terrified because I'm not getting any headphone monitoring. It's like, boy, I hope the cable's still connected and everything like that.
I hope he's not like
and I have
wind noise and buffeting.
And I have record limits as well. So I had a much more difficult time being like, I'm not just running out and getting like cool 30-second clips, for a montage I'm going to build later. And that made that a much more frustrating camera experience for me, which might be to my detriment as a reviewer. But by the end of the trip, I was like, please give me something, anything. And then the GH7, they were like, actually, that was sitting in the box in the back. We could have given you one of those. It was ready to go.
Yeah.
We didn't do that.
In a way, like overall, the biggest misses on this are just like monitoring issues, basically, because like what it captures, just zero complaints, absolutely none. Like the thing it brings back is the great image. Yeah. It's the ability to know, like the confidence to know that you're getting it while you're shooting. So I did use it for an event video the other night, and it was paired beside the S5 II and the S5 IIX. And, in that same thing, it's like, I can't tell which one I'm looking at later. They look exactly the same. So like, that's pretty great in a really small body. The other thing that it misses on a little bit is control wise. I find that back dial too twitchy.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm just like missing, like I'm trying to change settings on the fly and it's too consumer.
And there's plenty of real estate on the camera physically, right? They just wanted to really simplify the experience. And this is all stuff that we've been complaining about on Sony cameras back in the day, like all the RX cameras, same thing. A lot of the early 6000 series, like I don't want the back dial.
I think we've just been so vicious about the back dial on the S5 that they're like, oh, we'll show you a really fiddly dial. We're taking it to the next level.
Yeah. One of the most interesting features that I didn't think would be interesting to me, but I found interesting was the LUT, just the color profiles.
Yeah, right.
Just messing around with them, playing around with them. And
it just makes sense. Once it's there, you're like, oh, yeah, this should be on everything.
It's not revolutionary, right? But it was fun. But that legacy is something we're going to see on all Panasonic cameras going forward. So that's not really an S9 thing, right? So if you really take it down to who's going to use it, I mean, I still think it does have play for people who want like a compact full frame.
I also think that it's going to land well for people that don't spend that much time watching YouTube videos. Yeah. And this is part of the problem with reading the comments is, not realizing how many people buy a camera based on an ad or their friend has it or just a quick TikTok or like they're just aware it looks nice.
Yeah, it does look nice. Yeah.
And I think if they buy it just because it looks good in the store, they'll probably, if it's that kind of user that doesn't really know what every other camera has, they're probably going to have a good time.
Yeah. And again, the key is, yes, it's a limited camera, especially for advanced enthusiast, but what it does do, it does well. It does fine. And I even used it just for some casual video, Riverside, because I'm out with the guys fishing. They're not technical people. They don't know how to operate a camera. So giving them something like that, it's just a little bit easier, right? Because it's not intimidating. It's not, they don't like, oh, do I have to do back button? What do I have to do? Like, no, you just hit record, shotgun mic.
It'll work.
Super easy, and it'll work. And it did. It actually did just fine. So I think in the context, interesting camera. Well, it was nice to be in Japan and see you.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and then since then, we've also had another big announcement. The GH7 is out. As of recording, I haven't put out my video. Right. I did record. I have videos just sitting around that I recorded and haven't put out yet. But
you hatch them like eggs. You like incubate them like beautiful chicks.
Yeah, let's say it'll come out better in the end.
I just want to say I have had very limited time using the GH7 because
I've been selfish. So selfish.
He's so in love with it.
It's so uninteresting as a photo camera to me.
Totally.
Even the G9 II, that's like their photo camera,
was a better video camera. He gave me the G9 II because I'll never touch this thing again.
So something I'm trying to figure out is, I want to put myself in the mindset of somebody that, Micro Four Thirds isn't a setback. That like that's
right.
That's fine. Which isn't me because I want the low light and I want the bokeh. Like I want to blur the background too often to make that choice. But why do you guys think people would still choose a GH7 right now? Like, because there's so many amazing features, but
like I'm on a slightly different note because with Micro Four Thirds, I've used it for a long time for photography.
You actually use it.
And I don't mind it. Like I do like the image quality. You can get the brighter lenses to get the shallow depth of field. That's not a problem. So it's like but yes, I mean, would I prefer like a Sony A7R5 for most of my work? Yes. I don't mind the somewhat larger size in most situations. For me, the Micro Four Thirds has the strength of either being really compact. I wish they'd bring back a GF series camera, or having a compact system bigger, but you get smaller lenses, wildlife sports where maybe you're not going to shoot a lot of low light or you're not too worried about that. But for video, it's not a big detriment, right? Because video doesn't need resolution, and you can still get excellent dynamic range out of it, especially with what Panasonic's doing.
Especially now, what they did in the GH7
with their
is smart.
DR boost is amazing. So I think it's not a detriment for GH7, and then you get the smaller lenses and you get the smaller package sometimes.
And more
although
affordable.
not with the GH7.
It's a giant, but the affordable lenses too. So I was thinking, because I think about that, I'm like, well, it's still a big camera, so you're not getting that small, but pricing together a package of like, you want a 24 to 70 and a 70 to 200, the price compared to a full frame those lenses are
and the size
like half the price or less.
Unless you get the right ones.
The other big thing too is full frame is great, but it's going to be extremely expensive if they bring out a sensor that reads even close to as fast as the GH7. So I suspect the GH7, if you want oversampled 4K 120, there's no other camera out there right now. So yeah, we are comparing it to kind of a theoretical future camera. Even looking at the faster stacked sensor cameras, like really expensive ones, Z9s, R3s, they still can't do that. So if you want the really fast readout on it with all the video features, like the 32-bit float audio, we're having mic weirdness, and I'm not stressed. I'm not wearing headphones anymore.
Did we say that in the setup?
No,
We're doing audio into this. So the 32-bit float audio.
Unless we screwed anything up with it, that's what you're hearing right now is this new 32-bit XLR adapter on top of the GH7.
And Tyler's just going to dial in the levels afterwards.
I sure hope so. and then all the echo will magically go away.
That's not how sound works.
I don't think it'll work that way, but yes. But I have been saying for many years, like it does feel like Panasonic. I'm going to say it because I've said it before. It feels like Panasonic is really pushing video and kind of letting photography go by the wayside. And I know that they don't want to say it. They're like, oh, we just made the S9. That's a cute little photo camera. And the S5 II is a great hybrid, which it is. And the G9 II it was a photocentric camera, except it wasn't because everybody loved it for video. So it's like, I really want to see Panasonic starting to make cameras for photographers. And that's where the small, I think, would be really
They have this opening right now that if they can get their pro photo and their pro video bodies out as soon as possible, I have no idea, like now, they would suddenly like leapfrog everything available right now. I don't know when the next Sony release is going to be. I know we're going to have some kind of R5 II eventually, probably within the year. But like once those start coming out, well, it's the game's going to be up in the air a bit. But right now, if they just brought the features that they've brought to the GH7 and to the S5 II, they would be in a really good spot.
Yeah.
But
and like you said earlier, why not go after the market that the X100 targets, that the GR3 targets, that those cameras that people can't get, and Micro Four Thirds Micro Four Thirds is fine image quality for a pocket camera that you're going to carry around. I don't think you need to necessarily have a full frame.
I think you had a very different experience using it because we were sneaky and brought Sigma contemporary lenses to the launch, which other people didn't have access to. You had that tiny little 90 millimeter, the bitty little 65. And yeah, those are outliers in L mount, but that's the standard in Micro Four Thirds. And again, Panasonic's no stranger to just releasing the bodies. Same for full frame and compact, like the S5 II and the G9 II are the exact same body, basically, less the fan. They could just take the body that they've got in full frame, put a super fast reading out GH7 sensor in it, and a bunch of Micro Four Thirds lenses. I think that'd be a huge camera right now. And with that extra bit of space, maybe they could throw in a headphone jack or something.
But I mean, if you gave me a small pocketable camera that had an EVF on it, took Micro Four Thirds, had the GH7 sensor, I would, and it was like this big. Right? Because they've done that before. They could do it again.
Are you talking about that new?
That's why you have to watch on YouTube.
Lux 8 thing?
Well, no, but Micro Four Thirds. It's great to have a fixed lens and everything, but why not have the beauty of interchangeable lenses? Yeah, sure. And Micro Four Thirds is where that's such a big strength because you can carry. I used to carry my GF1. I'd have like a wide angle in this shirt pocket, a tele in this shirt pocket, and a zoom. Sure. And I, travel to Hawaii and stuff. It was great. So I would like to personally see something like that again. Yeah.
Part of where I think we ended up with this GH7 is it's almost like a playground for every feature. Yeah. Like any feature available in any other camera, it's almost all crammed in here. And the only trade-off is the smaller sensor.
And the cost.
And but I mean, still compared to like the whole Alexa color science, like having the Arri Log C in there is really, it's like your chance to be like, what does professional color science look like? Let me start playing around with that in DaVinci. Let me see how I can match it to bigger cameras. Dynamic range isn't there. It doesn't look like the same image, but like you're now in the world of all these super professional features at not, at a accessible cost. Like it's not a cheap camera, but it's, a professional can save up for it.
We shall see.
Yeah. All of these great cameras led me to this this like kind of bigger topic that is perennial in my mind, but is we're starting to approach a point in video that we hit with photo a while ago of a bit of a feature plateau. And I'm saying this as a question actually, so you guys can tell me if it's true or not. But like these are all awesome cameras, like we have some really great options out there. The new I don't have anything to say about it, but there's also the new Canon C400 that looks epic. A few years ago, let's try to figure out when, we hit this point with photo cameras where it's like, they are getting better, and I'll still update mine sometimes, but it's not so important. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
you
we've
can
reached
kind
a
of
point
get
where
there.
like 45 megapixels is lots, 50 or 60 is lots,
Yeah,
right?
so
Not everyone even needs
When
that.
do you think that was? When it was like, look, the jumps aren't so huge lately.
I think it would have been when features like IBIS started to really get solid. You know, we had 6-stop IBIS system, which was really effective. Sony's real-time autofocus was great. And then companies like Canon and Nikon did play catch up. And that was only a couple years ago.
Right.
You know, but I feel like image quality wise, yeah, we've plateaued for a while.
It's been the D810, I'd say, was the last step we ever saw in image quality.
Yeah, it wasn't sensors. Yeah, it would had to be other things. Autofocus performance.
Yes. But that counts.
Hybrid capability.
That stuff counts
IBIS.
for me. I mean, you know,
100%.
because what I think of as maybe the last big jump was, for me, it was actually the Canon R, which is like a lower end camera, but it was the first time I had a mirrorless that had killer sensor. And the mirrorless autofocus, like that camera didn't have the best autofocus, but going from DSLR to mirrorless, it's like now
The
it's
eye,
focusing
yeah.
on the spot that, you know, if it thinks it's sharp, it is sharp. That was like the last huge change for me. And since then, it's been much more.
It's plateaued for a while.
Yeah.
And I think what we've really seen, and a lot of photographers complain about this, I don't know why, but they do, where it's like, well, all we're seeing is new video features. And it's like, well, yeah, it's true. I mean, really, you're seeing photo cameras become hybrid cameras, right? That's the catchword that we all use now.
But it's the gap. That's where the gap was.
Yeah. And so I think what's interesting is we saw this push towards these big flagship cameras that are going to have hybrid features. They're going to have great IBIS. They're going to have great autofocus. That's where it's all going to go. And photographers kind of felt like, oh yeah, it has plateaued. And I think what we're now seeing is people are getting into other alternatives of photography. Like, I mean, Pentax just came out with a half frame film camera.
Right.
You know, people are shooting analog a lot more than they ever did. You know, obviously 70s and 80s aside, you know, but it's had a resurgence. People are wanting the pocketable cameras. Like, people are starting to look for alternatives to just raw tech and get back into the experience of it. Leica's doing great as always, you know, and they've really accelerated their camera program in a big way. So I think we're seeing the photographers are starting to look for other areas that will excite them because of the plateau in photography. And I don't know, I mean, Jordan, would you say videography now at this point, we're starting to get to the same point?
Well, we're getting closer because, like you said, there's still compromises. The GH7 is really close to like my perfect camera for me. But also, I've got experience using cinema cameras and stuff like that. I feel like there's still such a wide gulf between a camera that shoots beautiful video and is very accessible. Where in photography, I do feel like more and more you could grab something, you know, put it in a, you know, one of your auto exposure modes. You're going to get good images, and, you know, it's just up to how creative you are. Where so many of these companies are trying to do, we're going to do like an accessible video interface. And it's been like Sony ZVs that just have you like, I'm missing a bunch of controls. The ones that they've taken away from me are very confusing, things like that. So I feel like it's more, the features are there, the technology is there. It's going to be a matter of how do we make an interface that is actually workable for video. I mean, even Apple can't figure it out. They're like, I guess we need 2 apps. And you know what? It might still not be advanced enough. So you need the Blackmagic app. So now we've got 3 tiers of interface, depending on, you know, how much you know. They have to refine that. But the technology, I do think, is there. You know, as sensors got better for video, that also helped photography. So that's kind of pushed that forward quite a bit.
I mean, it's all of our job to showcase the latest gear. That's our job, right? To say, this is the new tech, this is the new change. And I do understand the sentiment with viewers where they're like, why don't you buy like a D850? Why, you know, or why don't you go get like an A7 III? Or, you know, like, well, you don't need to get these latest things. And you're not wrong.
Yeah.
It's just, that's not our job,
Yeah,
right? Our job is to
it's harder to run a channel about used cameras.
Well, yeah, and we do retrospective, but like, it's like our job is to show the latest gear, but you're absolutely right. Technology isn't advancing quite the same way, and we have more choice than we've ever had before, and used cameras are absolutely a great way to go. And frankly, digital cameras, for the most part, get very little use from a lot of people. So used cameras are a great way to keep the thing going and keep stuff out of the landfill and recycling depots. So yeah, I think it's great. I think the plateaus aren't necessarily a bad thing. People can stick with cameras longer than they ever had. Remember back in like the early DSLR days where every year a new camera came out and it was
a revolution,
such a substantial improvement that you wanted to kick your old camera into the gutter.
I clearly remember.
Right? And that's not the case anymore, and that's great.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. But we still have to show the latest gear. That's our job.
And I think we're sort of in the first generation of those for video. And some of the things that got us there is like 10-bit is huge. I think there's enough people that have started video recently that they don't even remember 8-bit was just happened. Like I have videos, I don't know. We're re-editing our portfolio website the other day. So I was going through a bunch of our stuff that we'd shot a few years ago that's in our portfolio. I'm like 8-bit, just
Banding
can't,
colors are all
colors are a mess. I'm like, this was so good so recently. And now I look and I'm like, wow, like it looks so much better from a $2,000 camera now.
I feel like it's funny going back to what you were saying earlier. I think that the threshold really was the GH5 is something that like I could grab that right now and I could do my job with it. And I wouldn't feel completely like pulling my hair out like with 8-bit, really restricting how I expose my image. I think that might actually have been the tipping point camera for video, in the same way that I don't know, on photography it's like a 5D3 where the autofocus and the image quality were finally pretty close to what we have.
And the funny thing is now we just hit that year for phones as well. To me, iPhone 15 is that the beginning of seeing that plateau in the video phone world. And actually it's something we didn't touch when we were talking about the Final Cut recording we're doing right now. This is all in like SDR baked in iPhone colors, which, they look fine, but they also look kind of fake and you have like no control. Like
I'm pretty tanned. Am I kind of magenta
I'm looking
tan?
at it here on multiple displays, and it does look like it's being captured on a phone, guys.
Yeah, exactly. So with this recording, you can capture in ProRes log,
right?
But if you want to shoot log, only ProRes. And this is a huge. I was really hoping that with the Final Cut camera, it meant they would bring either ProRes LT at the very least, or H.265 for smaller file sizes, but pro-looking video.
Yes,
we didn't get that. I'm like recording this podcast in ProRes HQ.
Totally infeasible.
It's not it would be way too big. So that is still a kind of missing key thing. But back to plateauing phones, like there's still a long way to go with phones. I'm very excited for the iPhone 16, but we're starting to taste it where it's like, if you use the right LUT and the right app, it can look like, a big camera.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how often do people need to update their phones nowadays, right? I feel like that's even hopefully.
Well, with AI.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. I was talking with Chris about that on the way out. Like the two flagship phones from this year are the only ones
I think
that
this
are
is going to be a big year for phones.
Yeah.
I think iPhone 16 is going to sell gangbusters.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this for a while, and we didn't touch on this, but we should, because when we talked about plateauing, right? The sensors have plateaued, the IBIS has plateaued, the autofocus has plateaued. I can't think of many situations where I'd want, for example, like real-time focusing from Sony to be better than it is now. Sure. But what hasn't plateaued is the processing power, and that's where all this cool stuff comes in. That's the sort of barriers to get into more computational photography in bigger sensors. Faster reading sensors is another thing that we need to see. We have those. We just need to see the price come down. But then phones' processing power is getting better and better every iteration.
How long ago did we first start talking about, what about when computational photography comes to our full frame cameras? Like that conversation is old at this point.
It's gotta happen.
And but we are no closer. I mean, at all. Like even, there's apps that have tried to do it to like your raw photography, Luminar, Pixelmator, I don't know, there's a bunch. It's like, we'll do like AI processing, but it's not like what a phone does. A phone is like...
And it's not convenient like a phone. That's the key.
It's not real time.
It has to be internal, just done for you.
Yep.
No taking 30 files and going onto software afterwards and compiling them.
The amount we take for granted that the preview in the iPhone is live of that finished image
of all
at
of them
60 frames per second, or maybe, I don't know what it's previewing at 120 maybe, but like you're seeing the image as it's going to look. Whereas if I bring in something from a Canon, I still have to wait 10 seconds for the...
Yeah, like even Sony's new A9 III, they're like, we finally got it. It shoots fast enough that we can do frame blending just like a smartphone. And no one, is, to the best of my knowledge, has ever tested this because it's only done in post through Imaging Edge, which will crash every time you
And it's
try
annoying.
to
It's
open
not
it up.
convenient.
Well, and also this blending isn't doing much object awareness, right? Like an important part of the way the phone does it is skies are maybe the best example that every time it sees a sky, it's like, I'm going to treat that like a sky, and I know what you want skies to look like. I still need to bring it into Lightroom and use AI object detection. And
Exactly. So I think we're still going to be dependent on a lot of cloud-based stuff, because also, like, I don't think those companies, the classic film company, Sony, Panasonic, Canon, well, Panasonic maybe, but Canon, Nikon, they don't have the R&D into computational photography to really make advantage of it yet. So take advantage. So I don't know.
So what's next? What's like missing for the real plateau? Because I have a short list. I'll throw my first one out, built-in ND.
For video, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for photo would be great
Or for
too,
photo.
but,
I mean,
yeah.
the fact that the X100 has had it the whole time, I know it's only one level of ND, but I'm like, why is it only like one? Are there any other cameras that have like still like especially photocentric cameras that have a built-in ND filter like that? Why is it so rare, and why can't the GH7 have it?
I mean, it's easier on a fixed lens with a sealed unit on a with an APS-C sensor, of course, right? Full frame would be very tricky. You'd have to have a carousel of some sort, so it would be pretty wild.
But still, give me one level of ND.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have something physically dropping in and out of the sensor, then the body needs to be at least twice as big as that to store it when it's not there. So that's why you see something with an ND like the C70 that's, a huge body with an APS-C
Otherwise, you don't have
sensor
space
on
for IBIS units and
which
stuff
is
like that.
which is why electronic ND is so exciting to me, because you could actually just have it. Right now, it's on or it's off. And I'm hoping someone can at some point figure out a way where you could leave the filter in front of the sensor and dial it back to the point that you're not losing exposure, and then be able to crank it up. If someone does that, then, I mean, that's immediately like I will upgrade for that feature.
Or for photographers, not for videographers, having computational technology like OM System uses, which can largely mitigate the use of ND filters.
How so? I don't know what to do.
They do their live ND, so they're basically compiling multiple shots to mimic, once blended, actually very convincing longer exposure motion blur. So maybe you're shooting 15th of a second shutter speeds, but you're getting the look of like a full second kind of thing.
Oh, that's cool.
Actually, it works great. OM Systems computational technology is great. It hasn't advanced since it was Olympus really too much. So hopefully that will keep going. But that kind of stuff would be great to see in larger sensor cameras.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, iPhones can kind of do it, but it doesn't look the same.
Google's long exposure tool in their photo things are actually pretty good. Yeah.
I remember it was like 20 years ago, our friend Kyle Marquardt was just like, no, I don't have any ND filters with me, so I'm just going to do a whole bunch of quarter-second exposures and throw them together in post. And that works.
Yeah.
It does the same thing.
So, we just need the processing power. I'm sure we have it. They just got to do it. I don't know. So I'd like to see more of that kind of stuff for sure. That computational photography and larger sensors would be, for me, the new frontier.
Right. Also get 32-bit float everywhere.
On everything.
Yeah. And then we're there. And then we don't need to... Then what are we going to
Well, and then all the cameras are going to have to support Apple Pro Vision immersive VR.
Or there'll be more film cameras coming out, and that's what we'll be testing. Exactly. But
that'll be interesting. This new Pentax 17, I got to play with it. I had a ton of fun.
I just started watching your review before it came, but I didn't finish. Yeah, you like it?
I did. I had a really good time. Everybody's like,
he was
the photos
clearly
are so
having
great
a lot of
and stuff.
fun
Like, okay, really?
that.
But it's like it's a gamble. I even said in my article and video, it's like I don't know how well it'll do. I hope it does well. It's not cheap. It's expensive.
I hope it doesn't have to do well. I hope that they're like, what, let's just play around, and that they didn't bet the company on it.
We'll see what happens. I hope it does well. I hope it at least
could see it doing
gets other people to kind of, make more of these new film cameras and stuff. I think that'd be great. Why not?
I think it's worth pointing out, on the day we're recording this, there are 2 new film cameras being released.
What's
the new
second
Fuji
one?
film and the Pentax.
I didn't see this Fuji yet.
Fujifilm's bringing back an Instax wide.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's probably happened since 1976, I'm guessing.
I still don't consider that film, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
We're different there. Yeah,
no computer is film.
But it is analog, yes, absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining me in person, guys, and testing out this new system. Hopefully we recorded something here. And for anybody that isn't already watching Petapixel Podcast, do it now.
Please do. Thank you.
Watch the channel. Follow you guys. What are your handles on various social media platforms of choice?
My last name, if you put it in the description, the spelling is so rare that as long as you go Niccolls, you'll find pretty much just me.
Yeah, you're the only one. I think your dad misspelled it when you were born. I
don't know.
And it's made you very Googleable. That's great. I'm that Jordan Drake.
Oh,
not
that
the other
Jordan
Drake.
Drake.
Chris.Niccolls at Jordan Drake.
Awesome. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks so much for having me.